In-depth football coverage from The Athletic is now just £1 per week. See the link in the description to sign up today. For footballers, hamstring injuries are a hazard of the trade. They're a nuisance injury which can cost weeks, sometimes even months of a season, and in particularly bad cases, they can change the course of a career. But what actually are hamstrings, and why are we always talking about them in football? So technically the hamstring isn't one muscle, but it's actually a group of 3 different muscles which run from the pelvis to the knee down the back of the thigh. Collectively they are known as the hamstring, and it works by elongating and contracting with the flexing of the knee, with the aim of controlling the swing of the leg. So to simplify, consider a running motion. After a leg leaves the ground, it encounters 3 stages as it begins to move forward, entering what's known as the swing phase. Stage 1 is the initial swing. Stage 2 is the mid-swing, and lastly, stage 3, the terminal swing, which occurs just before the foot returns to the ground. Now at this point, the hamstring is fully extended, but at the same time, it's also contracting, working to control the leg. And the conflict between those 2 movements generates what's known as eccentric stress upon the muscle. Too much stress and the muscle fibers tear, causing injury, with the extent of the tear determining the severity. For example, a grade 1 is a 25% tear in the muscle, grade 2 is when the tear is between 25 and 75%, and the most serious case, grade 3, refers to anything above, including a complete rupture. So the most at-risk athletes are sprinters. Given their dependence on power and explosiveness, that's self-evident. But any sport that involves quick changes of direction or rapid acceleration or deceleration involves a high instance of hamstring injuries, and that of course includes football. In a 2012 study in the Journal of Sport and Health Science entitled Injury Rate, Mechanism and the Risk Factors of Hamstring Strain Injuries in Sport, it was estimated that on average, during an English professional football season, hamstring injuries accounted for 90 missed days and 15 missed matches per club. And logically so. Players must change directions and speeds regularly, but the nature of the sport also includes a further risk, as Dr. Raj Brar of 3CB Performance explains. When you kick and the knee is straightening, the hamstrings have to slow down the kicking motion to control it. In other words, the hamstrings provide the stability necessary to strike a football properly and precisely. But the cost of that facility, however, is that every pass, shot, or even tackle is a potential source of eccentric stress. And the hamstring's capacity to cope with that is determined by what's known as its load tolerance. Dr. Brar defines 2 different types of load tolerance. One that describes what a muscle can bear at any given moment, but another which measures what it can withstand over time, with the effects of fatigue or cumulative endurance. Like a bucket filling with water, however, where the load tolerance is exceeded drop by drop or with a sudden burst, the effect is the same, as are the consequences. So what determines load capacity? Well, factors such as age, general health and physical conditioning are highly instructive, but so is injury history, and that's really what makes damaging hamstrings so hazardous for a player. When a muscle suffers a tear, the body repairs itself, but it does so with scar tissue. And scar tissue isn't as flexible as the natural tissue it replaces. As a result, a build-up results in a loss of elasticity within the muscle and a restricting effect on movement. And crucially, it also decreases load tolerance and increases the likelihood of reoccurrence. Dr. Brar references high-level research that estimates that on returning from a hamstring injury, a player is then at twice as much risk of suffering another for the next year. So they are notorious for interrupting careers, but clearly they can sometimes even change them too. Barcelona's Ousmane Dembélé has had 4 significant injuries in that area since arriving at the club in 2017 and rupturing his hamstring on his debut. The former Liverpool forward Fernando Torres once had 3 hamstring injuries in the same 2008-09 season, and most famously, the serious tear Michael Owen suffered at the age of 19 was not only a precursor to a succession of further injuries, but also necessitated an adaptation to his playing style. However, those kind of after effects don't always have a single cause. Sometimes they are attributable to the damaged muscle itself, but in other instances, secondary factors might be responsible. The player's training application might drop. Their strength and conditioning program may be insufficient. Sometimes their intensity in games themselves might fall. And in all three of those cases, that could be partly attributable to the psychological effect of too many injuries or a loss of confidence in the muscle. Or the explanation could be simpler still. If a player isn't properly committed to recovery and isn't appreciative enough of the nutritional and lifestyle factors that determine how well the body heals, then a hamstring injury is more likely to have a longer-term legacy. Whatever the cause, that group of muscles is a player's career. In an interview with The Telegraph, Michael Owen once said that the severity of the injury he suffered had left him running on a third of his power. And Fernando Torres was more definitive. Following his injury-blighted 2009, his hamstring let him down on the world's biggest stage. Despite playing just 24 minutes as a substitute, it would tear at the end of Spain's extra-time win over Holland in the 2010 World Cup final. It was the muscle he lived by, he said in his autobiography. It was also the muscle that expedited his descent from the game's peak. And the same would be true for almost any footballer, especially those who depend on speed and acceleration for their livelihood. Tifo is delighted to be able to offer full access to The Athletic now for just £1 per week. Read in-depth coverage of your favourite teams across 10 different sports, provided by some of the best sports journalists in the world. Follow the stories that you care about with closer access and intelligent takes. Whether it's sports news, tactics or finances, you'll find it all on The Athletic, alongside a host of brilliant podcasts dedicated to different teams. So, see the link in the description now. Thanks for supporting Tifo and of course watching today's video.